Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. As the NFL draft approaches, we've got a bonus preview episode for you featuring a great guest, Erik Schlitt from Pride of Detroit. Erik has done extensive draft research and even created something called the Grit Index for incoming NFL prospects. We'll break that down and a whole lot more. We'd also like to say thank you to Cherry Republic for sponsoring the podcast. They're Michigan-made goodness straight from Traverse City. Whether it's game day, a picnic, or a gift, they've got you covered with snacks and more. Head over to cherryrepublic.com and check them out. Now let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, everyone. This is Herman Moore, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Erik Schlitt. Erik is the managing editor of Pride of Detroit and the co-host of the Midweek Mailbag podcast. Erik also hosts his own called Detroit Lions Breakdown podcast. His primary focuses include Lions news and analysis with expertise on the NFL draft, salary cap, and the X's and O's of football. Erik, thank you for finding the time in your schedule to meet with me and discuss Detroit Lions football.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
I know it's a very busy time of year for you. Wanted to check, though, I did take your bio straight from the Pride of Detroit website. Is all that information still accurate? Have there been any additions or changes?
No, I don't think so. That's pretty up to date. We just did a system change not too long ago. So those are all pretty fresh. But yeah, I've been in this role with those things for I think about 5 years, maybe 6. But it's been a fun little half decade here at Pride of Detroit, and I'm excited to see where we keep going.
I am as well. I love your guys' content, folks. You really should go check them out if you haven't already. And I do remember that update, and I remember the font changes and all the discussion around that took place. Yeah. But it looks good. It was a nice addition. All right, well, let's get started here. The NFL Draft 2026. Let's start with the big overarching thing. What is the story of this draft class? Now, I've done some general research myself. Sounds like it's not heavily loaded at quarterback or wide receiver early on, other than that number 1 pick. So hurts the Lions because those could push some linemen down and help them out. But how would you describe this draft class? What are the strengths, weaknesses, and maybe rounds of availability that you've seen?
Yeah, what's unique about this draft class is that the premier players don't play at premier positions. And so you have guys like a running back, an off-ball linebacker, a safety who are amongst the top players in this class, but typically those are not positions that are held at a premium by the NFL. Those positions usually get drafted a little bit later in the first round, not necessarily in the top 10, top 5. And so we're seeing a little bit of a twist at the top. And like you said, this is a very thin quarterback class, which is certainly going to add into the mix. And with a lack of a lot of blue chip players, I'd say there's less than what there normally would be. What you have is you have a kind of shorter bell curve at the top, like it's a really kind of sharp curve. But the best part about this draft is that once you get from like picks like 16, like 17, right about where the Lions are, till about 50, those guys are all going to be similarly kind of ranked. So if you're the Lions, you're hoping a couple of guys fall because someone's taking a position of need, and then you'll get a chance at one of those kind of top tier guys. And if you don't, then trading back is an option because the level or a quality of player from, like I said, halfway through the first through halfway through the second, it's about the same. What gets really interesting here is that when you go from 50 to about 150, those guys are also kind of equally talented. And so usually it's like 50 to 100, and you can kind of like, finesse those guys. You're looking for scheme fits and stuff like that. But it goes deeper into the 4th round. And so a guy that you get in the 4th round could be not far off from a guy that you get in the latter parts of the second round or even the third. And so it's really kind of what they call fat in the middle, right? It's a fat in the middle class. And then it dips again kind of sharply at the end because it's not super deep. So the sweet spot for this class is going to be the Lions' first four picks. That's really where they're going to get their talent. And if the board falls the right way or the wrong way, trading down to try and get more picks in that kind of fat part of the class, or maybe trading up into that the meat of that class, those are going to be the strategic moves that I think will get the more quality type players as opposed to, necessarily trying to get all 9 draft picks on the roster. I think they may try and get as many out of that middle group as they can.
That makes a lot of sense. And having those 2 fourth-round picks, it's nice that they have, like what you're saying, that depth right there of the
Yeah.
quality of players right in that spot. Well, let's start early. All right. When it comes to the Lions, it seems like offensive tackle, defensive end, top 2
Mm-hmm.
picks seems like those are like the most in vogue things.
Sure.
Everybody's talking about them, and it seems like many years they talk about that. So, are you seeing it that way? Obviously, you never know how the board's going to fall, but are those likely their top 2 picks? Could something different happen?
Yeah, I certainly think those, if they had their way and if the board falls the right way, those would be the 2 positions they would love to attack, right? But as we know with Brad Holmes, he isn't going to just take the position because it makes the most sense. He's going to take the better player. And it works out in the end when he does that, right? Like taking Jack Campbell at 18 when you already had 3 starting linebackers wasn't necessarily something he had to do, but he did it. And now it looks like a genius move, right? And so positions like linebacker, safety, corner, I do think those are going to be in play with one of those first 2 picks, even though secretly, if you could get what you wanted, it would be tackle and edge, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Brad Holmes even talked about in his presser today that your team changes so much from year to year that you don't really
Yeah.
want to be chasing positions. You want to be building quality players and bringing them to the roster. Well, let's just look at the offensive tackles for a minute. Is there 1 or 2 guys that you like at offensive tackle that might be there in, 15 to 18, somewhere around there for the Lions?
Yeah, I think the way this board falls is I'm anticipating 6 or 7 of them to go in the first round of the offensive tackles. I do think you're going to see like Francis Mauigoa from Miami and Spencer Fano from Utah. I think they're going to go off the board earlier before you can get to the Lions. Monroe Freeling from Georgia seems like he's a guy who could potentially go as well. It'd be interesting if maybe Freeling bumps like Fano down a little bit. That would be, I think, a really fun choice for the Lions. He would fit very well with them. But my eyes have always been on Blake Miller from Clemson. He is, in my opinion, the most pro-ready offensive tackle. He's going to be on my Lions board that I keep. He's going to be my 3rd offensive tackle behind Mauigoa and Fano. And so I'm going to have him and then Freeling just like right after him. I think Freeling is an upside guy. Caden Proctor out of Alabama is going to get a lot of interest, I think, from the Lions. And the rumors are flying that the Lions are very interested in him. I just don't see the character fit being as flush as it is with some of the other tackles. So Blake Miller's been the guy I'm kind of eyeballing. If like I said, and then the other one is if Freeling or Fano, if one of those guys jump, or if like Freeling jumps up and Fano falls, or if Fano goes and Freeling's like those guys are kind of the other ones that I think would be in the mix with Miller. I'm not as sold on Proctor. I like the talent. The more I learn about him, the more I worry about the locker room type fit.
Yeah, we actually spoke about Proctor on our show yesterday, and we have some hesitations ourselves as to that might not be the right fit for a variety of reasons for the Lions, especially when you're drafting that early in the draft. You want a lot of boxes checked.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump over to the defensive line for a moment, and the position that ever since the Lions have drafted Aiden Hutchinson, everybody's clamored for another defensive end. And
Sure.
so, whether it's a first round pick, a second round pick, who are one or two of the defensive ends that you are really optimistic about? You have a high rating on, or you think might be a good fit for the Lions for what they want, and maybe not a top five pick since the Lions probably aren't picking in the top five.
Yeah, if Keldrick Falk falls to them, I think stylistically and stylistically he's a fit for what they've typically searched for opposite Aiden. I have a feeling the NFL is going to like him better than the analysts do, so I don't expect him to be here. I don't expect him to go in the top five, but top 10 wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. He has his combination of traits and athleticism and size. The NFL teams tend to covet stuff like that, and so he would be a really good fit if he was there. I just don't think he will be. Messidor is going to be another guy that I think they'd consider at 17, Akeem Messidor from Miami. But if we're looking at the second round, Gabe Akis from Illinois is the guy that's mostly on my radar, and and then it's just a matter of I don't know who else is going to fall, right? Is it going to be could Zion Young fall? Could Malachi Lawrence fall? Could TJ Parker fall? Like there's a handful of guys that I think I could see going in the first round, but I could also see sliding back to 50 because they all have flaws and they don't necessarily fit. Like I said, this is kind of one of those drafts where once you get into like 20 to 50, those 30 guys aren't going to be that different, and it's going to be about matching up to the right team. And if TJ Parker doesn't fit the right team and he slides, I think the Lions would consider him. But really the guy that's always been on my radar is Gabe Akis. I think he would be in there about in that 50 spot, and he makes a lot of sense character wise, stylistically, background. It all kind of fits really well with what they would want opposite Aiden.
All right. Well, that's exciting to hear that there are some possibilities there in
Hmm.
that spot. Let me talk about something that could be a curveball for things. And there's been a lot of speculation on where is Penei Sewell going to play ever since Taylor Decker wasn't coming back. And even at the owners' meeting, Dan Campbell's like, I'd love to see him at left tackle. Um,
Sure.
my question is this: does it make the team better by putting Penei at left tackle, and then you've got Larry Borum and any other potential rookie at right tackle for a few different reasons? One, Sewell's your most talented offensive lineman. Put him at the left
Mhm.
tackle position. Even if you drafted a good left tackle, they're not going to be as good as Penei Sewell is right now.
Mhm.
And if you move Sewell to left tackle, could you go defensive end in the first round and grab a right tackle in the second round, and therefore maybe get a better defensive end and still get a quality enough right tackle to go in there?
So for me, I'm not. I don't have a preference on moving Panay to right or left. With the way that defenses rotate their edge guys to both sides, I think the right tackles are equally as inundated with a lot of really good pass rushers. Um, there is a inherent comfort to having your most talented offensive lineman on the left side, because that's where the Jared Goff's back is to him, and so I get that. At the same time, if the right tackle or if the correct tackle falls to them, I think they're just going to put the best guys on the field, right? If Freeling
Yeah.
is there and he's the best left tackle, and they could just leave Panay as is, and I'd be comfortable with that too. As far as taking an edge at 17 and then taking a tackle at 50, the trick is I don't know if I'm in love with any of the guys that might go there, right? I kind of mentioned the six guys that I think the offensive tackles that I think are going to be kind of in the mix. Henachor is the other guy um, from Arizona State. I think he might sneak into the first round or should sneak into the first round. And then after that, it's a big drop for me. It's a big
Okay.
drop. Like I don't know if there's another surefire starter. The next guy on my board is Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern. I like him. I don't know if he would necessarily beat Larry Borum as a rookie. Like I think they would challenge, and we'll see what happens. But he's not a surefire, I'm better than Borum type of guy. There's some of my colleagues that like Jennings Dunker from Iowa. I like him more as a guard. There's a lot of people that insist they think he can play right tackle. I like him as a player. There's some things about him that I think he would cause him to struggle. And so he's not clean. Tiernan's not clean. And a lot of the other guys I'm looking at as, I don't see them as top 50 type players. And so the trick for me is I don't love the second wave of offensive tackles, whereas I do like the second wave of edge guys. And so that's why I'm leaning leaning offensive tackle first and then edge in the second. I think you end up with a better balance of talent if you attack them in that position. Now, if they want to go edge in the first and then a different position and push tackle off, well, we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
All right. Well, and even though I threw that contrary out there, the bread and butter is being able to run the football and protect
Sure.
Jared Goff. And so I will be surprised if they don't go offensive tackle early,
Yeah.
just because it seems like that was the first domino to fall last year that just spiraled everything. And so I think they want to bring someone in. As I said, they lost in my episode the other day, they lost tackle 2 and tackle 3, Decker and Skipper. They brought in Larry Borum. I look at him as tackle 2.5. I look at him as right in between the two. And they need to bring somebody else in that's right about 2.5 or 2 to help add stuff. And again, there's some other guys on the roster that could grow. Let's go back to trading up or down. You've kind of laid out where the strengths are in this thing. It seems like it would be great to trade back based on all the available players. Is there a situation, though, where you could see the Lions trading up, or you would think it might be smart to trade up knowing they don't have a third-round pick? And so that gives them a little bit less ammunition to move.
Yeah, it'd really have to be for a blue chip player. That's the only way. And there's so few of them in this class. It would take somebody that you wouldn't expect to slide. Like I said, if the teams at the top all of a sudden start prioritizing other positions and a guy slides, they might be worth going up and getting. A guy like Caleb Downs, this is a safety from Ohio State.
Yeah.
He's top 5 player in this class, but he's not a premium position. So his talent's so good, he should still go in the top 10. But if he starts sliding out of the top 10, well, there's a world where you can get him and he instantly makes your secondary better. And even if Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are able to come back to full health, you can still play 3 safety sets with Downs because he's like Branch. He's very flexible and how you can get all 3 of them on the field at the same time. So if a blue chip player like Downs all of a sudden slides and the Lions are like, boy, it's only going to cost me a 4th rounder, or it's only going to cost me this to go up and get this guy, I could absolutely see them entertaining the idea of landing one of those blue chip guys, because that's always seems to be what Brad's strategy is can I get one of the top 12 to 14 guys in this class? And if I can, let's go do it. It's the same thing with that Aiden class when he he traded up from 32 to get JMO, right? Like JMO was the last of the blue chips that he had on his board. And he said, I'm going to go get him because I want that extra blue chip guy. And it's paid off. And so I could see him attacking if the right guy is there. But like I said, there's only a few of them in this class. And so you'd be talking about, I don't know, like 5 guys maybe that you didn't expect to go, maybe going. And that's a lot to ask when you only have 16 picks ahead of you.
That makes sense. And I loved the compensation the Lions gave up to move up and get JMO. That was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it felt like they won it on both ways there. Well, let's move a little bit to later rounds. The Lions have 2 4th-round picks. What other areas do you think the Lions might consider wanting to bring somebody in? A few spots that I kind of got highlighted are maybe a linebacker, a fourth tight end, knowing that Tyler Conklin and Brock Wright are both on 1 year, have 1 year on their contract at this point. Maybe another running back just for depth and or to see
Mhm.
if someone else will push. But wondering if there's any spots you think the Lions might be looking at, and maybe guys you have seen on your board that you like around that time.
Yeah, the hard part is there's a couple of spots that stand out to me, and I don't know if they always line up with where I think the talent might fall. But again, I think the bulk of that fourth round, you might see guys there that you didn't expect because of the talent. It being relatively equal. So I'm with you on linebacker. I would be surprised if they were comfortable with Malcolm as the starter if they're going to run three linebacker sets as heavy as they did last year. If you're telling me they're going to back off the three linebacker sets and play more nickel, then I would expect nickel to be more of a priority as opposed to linebacker. And with McCreary in the mix, what they tend to like to have is they like to have a nickel corner and then like a nickel safety. And so if you have McCreary already as that kind of corner, I would be looking at the safety group. So like if it's either so linebacker or safety, one of those two, depending on kind of how they want to adjust their defense. Or maybe they just go into the draft and they say, "Hey, this safety is better. We're going to adjust our defense depending on who happens to be there or where we can add more depth." And so linebacker safety make a lot of sense, but I do think those positions are kind of tied together. And defensive tackle is it's surprisingly thin with guys that you can should feel confident in. I do think there are question marks around some talent there when it comes to depth. And so I do think adding a defensive tackle is a low key kind of sneaky need. Um, in the fourth round, there's a lot of guys that I like if they kind of slide there. There's a lot of guys that I like kind of in that third, fourth round range, and there's maybe I don't know like eight of them that I like. And so, like locally, a guy like Rayshon Benny would be a lot of fun in Detroit. I think he can play the three and back up Aleem. I think he can play the 4I and he can supplement some of the stuff that like Levi and Zerike would do. So Rayshon Benny could be fun. I could also see them going after like more of like a nose tackle. Um, Albert Regis from Texas A&M. Tyler O'Needham from Texas A&M is also kind of like a Rayshon Benny type guy. Those guys, I think, are all in that kind of third, fourth range, and I could see the Lions saying, let's let's add some more depth. We need some younger guys on that interior, and if we can find some that can give us some more juice in the pass rush, all the better because that seems to be an area that I don't know what the answer is right now.
Well, and that also makes sense if you think back to how the second half of last year went. The Lions couldn't stop the run
Hmm.
very well, and that's the other part is they want to be able to run the ball. They want to be able to stop the run, force teams to pass. So that is a nice sneaky move there because you're right. DJ Reader, he just visited the New York Giants. He has not been
Hmm.
re-signed, and if he does, it's going to be a 1 year deal likely because where he is in his career, and obviously loss of Roy Lopez. So they do need somebody else in there. That does make sense. Well, let's switch over to the grit index. All
Okay.
right. This is something you put together back in 2023. And let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what it is and how it started. And this is kind of my understanding is these are guys that you think uniquely fit the Detroit Lions. Is that a good overview? You can go into more specifics, though.
Yeah. It's it, more and more over the last couple of years, we've heard the word grit exist outside of Detroit as well, right? A lot of teams are talking about grit now. Some of it is the Lions having success and teams trying to adapt what the Lions do, as the NFL does, right? They always it's a copycat league, right? So, but the concept here is I've always tried to find ways to get into the head of the current GM. When Bob Quinn was the GM, he drafted very heavily on traits. So what I did was I started charting every player he's ever drafted with Detroit, every player that he had been part of drafting in New England, and I found like, okay, they like this type of player with this type of trait and these specific numbers. And then I created a system that highlighted those things, and I was able to fairly accurately predict like guys that Bob Quinn would like. And so with Brad Holmes, there's not as much rhyme or reason to as far as like athletically pinpointing. He says he doesn't like the height, weight, speed guys, but then he drafts guys that are height, weight, speed, and he says, okay, it's the tape. I'm drafting them off the well. There's a correlation between the guys that look good on tape are also the guys that have good height, weight, speed, right? And so I couldn't really find a groove with Brad, and so I tried coming up with a way of trying to contextualize what he was looking for from a grit standpoint. And the excuse me, the best way I found to try and do that was I just said I'm going to read every draft or article I can think of from all the experts that I trust, and I'm going to just start keeping track of like how many times they say these like 12 keywords. And when they say these keywords, I'm just going to make a little tally in an Excel sheet and then add up the tallies. Whoever has the most tallies, those are guys that like keep getting mentioned as being like gritty type players. And that first inundation of the grid index was it was okay. It was raw, but you're trying to contextualize someone's opinion, which is really hard to do. And so the next I had a buddy of mine, Anthony, decide that he wanted to come on and help me. Excuse me. And Anthony said, "Look, I'm going to do more research for you. I'm going to find this guy, this guy, this. I'm going to find even more information." And we started expanding our vocabulary of what we were looking for. And then we came up with another variation of it. And it was okay. It was good. It was accurate, but it was okay. Last year, we expanded it up even more. We created a scaled system. We gave favoritism to analysts we trusted over analysts that we maybe were just kind of lukewarm on. We tried to get, we tried to iron out the flaws that we had in previous systems, and we were closer. We were a lot more accurate. Like Tate Ratlich was number 3 on our list. Tesla was like 12 or something like that. We had like, I think 6 of their 7 draft picks were all on the list in some capacity and pretty good on the list. And this year, we've tried to expand it even further. We've now tried to not just key on certain terms, but we're trying to contextualize the manner in which that term is being used. We're trying to look for different markers based on Brad Holmes' speeches, based on things that he said. And now it's becoming more of like an art form, looking for key things as opposed to just like pulling data, right? And we're also incorporating more of my draft board into it as well. So we're adding that physical, like athletic component to it. So it's going to be background, character, and then also like the athleticism component. And we're trying to blend them all together. And
Wow.
it's taking a little bit longer, but Anthony's doing just an insane amount of work on the character side. I'm doing a lot more on the grading the players and ranking them and whatnot. And we're blending them together, and we're getting a pretty good system. We're still kind of finalizing it, but at the end of the day, what we're hoping to do is get something that's closer to what aligns with Brad Holmes' vision of a player that fits a Dan Campbell coached team. And so it's never going to be perfect because what we're doing is our data is an analyst's opinion of a player, but we're trying to leave our bias out of it. I mean, obviously my rankings are my bias, but that's why we're not just solely doing it on my rankings. Like we're trying to combine the other evaluators' opinions on the players. And so we're hoping to come up with something that ends up being able to say, you know, here's the rankings for like the top 300 guys, and then we're going to have a scaled ranking. Everything's scaled nowadays, right? You got your RAS scores are scaled on a thing of 10. Last year we did ours on 100 to try and match like a PFF type system. We've scaled it down to 10. So it's like it's going to be
Okay.
like RAS. So you're going to be able to say like this is his RAS score, this is his grit score, and you're going to be able to should be able to just like look at it and understand what it means. And uh, in the end, it's 6 to 8 months worth of work behind the scenes for something we're going to put out a week before the draft and hope people can consume. But it's really a passion project and trying to find an angle on Brad Holmes that no one else is doing. And that's really what it is.
Well, the complexity and the comprehensiveness of it is extremely incredible. And yeah, so it's very impressive. And
Thank
you've
you.
already spoken about how it's evolved. And
Yeah.
that's also a great testament to the work you're putting in, that you're looking for the things that worked and didn't work and building on that. I was going to ask you which guys stood out last year. I did see that Tate Ratledge and Isaac Taslaw were a couple of the guys. How did you
Hassanine.
feel?
Hassanine was up there as well.
Hassanine as well.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you saw the Lions draft those guys based on the research you had done and knowing where you had ranked them?
So with Ratlich, I kind of pegged him in the second round, and he was the highest ranked uh, grit guy that was on the board. The other two guys both went in the first. And so Ratlich was there. I knew he was my highest guy. I knew it was a need. Um, and I'm in the draft room in Allen Park with all the other writers, and we're all just like trying to figure out what it is, who's the pick, what's it going to be. Everyone wants to get to their writing, and we're all professionals.
Yep.
But when they said Ratlich, I clapped my hands as loud as I think I ever have, and I let out an audible yes, because I was like, I'm like, I got it. I'm like, I knew the system was working, and so that was about as big of a cheer as I think I've ever done in a professional setting. But it was more about like, hey, this was like I said, 6 to 8 months of work to try and get to a point where I was like, this is the pick, because we all kind of make guesses who the pick's going to be.
Yeah.
And when it was coming down to it, they said, "Who's it going to be?" I said, "It's going to be Ratledge." Like, it should be Ratledge. Go looking at the grid index, looking at my draft board, it should be Ratledge. And when it was, I felt vindicated. I called Dan Jackson too, as well. He was kind of high up there as well. And so it's yeah, not my most professional moment. But yeah, I was very excited when it happened, because like I said, it was a slow build up to what we did last year, and it was nice to see it pay off.
Well, it was a well-earned, jubilation as well, because all that time, all that effort come in, and it shows, hey, you know what? This is working. I know what I'm doing, and there's my vindication.
Yeah, it was like I said, not my most professional moment, but everybody I think gives me a little bit of slack because they know the draft's always been a passion project of mine.
All right. Well, and then I'm going to come back to Hassanine. Well, let's talk about Hassanine right now,
Sure.
just because even though it's not this year, what do you like about him for the future? What do you see his role potentially being this year? He
Mhm.
missed a lot of time last year with the Lions. Do you see him developing into a role player this season?
Yeah, I kind of view him in a similar manner that they used Tyrus Wheat last year, which is essentially Aiden's going to give you 90 to 95 snaps a game. You fill out the 5 to 10 that Aiden doesn't, and that's okay, right? And that's an easy role for him. If you show more growth, you can expand it and you can do more things. I'm sure he'll contribute on special teams from the jump, and he'll be a big contributor there as well. It's in his mindset, in his personality, but he's still a sponge. Like, you could tell with special teams, he wasn't quite there. The effort was there, but the technique was not quite there. Learning the new kickoff rules was a bit of a hard thing for him at first, and you could see him grow into it, but he wasn't quite ready. What I like about him is you can see him fail, and then you can see him not make the same mistake the next time he does something. You can see him talk to guys and then implement what they're telling him. He talked to us about watching Aiden try and hit a move that only Aiden can do. And then Hassanine was like, "Well, I thought I'd try it." And then like he hit that move, and really no one else should be able to do it because Aiden's just the freaky size, strength, length that he has. It's just uncommon. And Hassanine hit it, and it worked. And what was funny was when he hit it, he like celebrated. Like he was like, "Oh my God, I got the move!" And instead of like getting to the quarterback and like being, he almost like jumped up and like Shep was like, "Go get the quarterback!" Like go get like finish. But you can see those moments with him where it's like, oh, there's potential. There's a learning curve for him that he's showing continued growth. So I think he should be able to be a contributor. Special teams, pass rushing role, those are options. But I'm keeping my expectations to you're gonna be Aiden's backup, and when Aiden doesn't play, you'll probably play in his spot. Um, but like I said, it's a small role, but it'll be a chance for him to grow.
Yeah, and special teams is a great spot to contribute as well because we know how
Yeah.
important that is. Well, let's go back to the grid index and this year's draft class coming in. Now, I know you haven't
Sure.
released the whole thing yet. That's
Yeah.
coming up in about a week or end of the week.
Yeah. So Anthony and I are still kind of finalizing where we're at. I've finished my offense and I'm now in the trenches, trying to finalize my defensive ends and defensive tackles. So I still have a little bit to do through the rest of the week to finish off my rankings. He's a little bit further along than me, but he is, we still have to blend it together and make it. It's probably going to be something that we probably roll out at the beginning of next week. So it'll be like trying to cram it all in the 3 days, but um, I think the extra time will make it worth it.
All right. Well, then, obviously, I'm not going to ask you to give stuff away because it's not there yet and you don't have the exact numbers. But
Yeah,
are there some players who you're like, we don't know where they'll line up in the finally fall on your grit index, but some guys that have some character traits or some grit scores that might line up well with the Lions? I know you've talked about one of the things is, what are some of the character things? Seems like the Lions like a lot of guys that have been team captains in college and stuff like
sure.
that. Are there any players that, hey, I mean, you mentioned Blake Miller, Clemson. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's a guy. Um,
yeah. Yeah, there's a reason why like a lot of the guys that I've liked because the traits that they show, right? Like Blake Miller has been high on my board. And while Anthony has been kind of working on that one side and I've been working on the other, I kind of know like what those traits are going to be. So it helps guide my rankings. I'm pretty sure Blake Miller will be the number one offensive tackle guy. Like he'll have the highest grid index of the offensive tackles. And again, I'm not 100% that that's where it'll be, but that's what I'm expecting. And that's one of the reasons why I've been so high on him in addition to his just play style. So, yeah, I'm expecting a guy like Blake Miller to be at the top. I fully expect him to be there. Um, there will be guys that kind of jump out. Like I said, Akis is a guy at edge rusher that I'm expecting to end up grading out pretty high. Um, Jacob Rodriguez for amongst the linebackers. He's going to be a guy I think will probably top out near, if not the top of the whole class. Like he's going to top out the linebackers. And then there's some good safeties as well. So it's a really good safety class. The one that's, like I said, Downs is going to end up being high up on that. Um, Thiemann is another safety from Oregon. He's going to end up being up there. And then there'll be a few surprises. Like we have a tight end that no one is really talking about, but he's going to have such a high grit score that he's going to be a guy that we'd be shocked if the Lions didn't like draft him in the seventh round or bring him in as a UDFA. And I'm gonna hold on to that one. I'll
You
tease that one
should.
just a
You
little bit.
definitely, yes.
But what I'll end up doing is I'll end up like breaking down like, which guys do we see the tape match, and like a guy like Blake Miller, and why he'd be high on the Lions board, but then other guys where the grit index is high enough that they're worth taking a shot on day three.
All right. Well, that's exciting. And that's all going to be posted at Pride of Detroit, correct?
Yep. Yeah. What we'll do, so we'll post the scores, and I'll write some articles with some thoughts on it. And then I have a Patreon that's associated with my Detroit Lions Breakdown podcast. And on that Patreon subscription that I have for that, we give everyone everything. We give them the draft board, we give them the grid index board, the whole full thing, and you can kind of see like
Nice.
all the stuff that's behind the scenes, and you can like we just put them in like kind of Excel sheets so that people can like take a look and interact with them and see how they work. Um, so yeah, that'll be something that'll be available for the people who really want to dig even deeper than just but yeah, all the main information will all be at Pride of Detroit.
All right. Well, you've done the research. So let me just put out the hypothetical, the dream but realistic scenario. If you were the Lions GM or if you're reading Brad Holmes' thoughts, what would you hope to have happen with the first two picks? Again, the dream scenario, but also realistic.
Yeah, I've done one mock draft this year, and in that mock draft, I went Blake Miller, the offensive tackle from Clemson in the first round, and then Gabe Akis, the Illinois defensive end in at 50. That was the two guys I picked. Those are the guys that make the most sense to me. Those are the ones that I think are going to score high, and I think those are realistic spots for both those guys. So, I mean, there's a reason why I'm the dots are connecting both tape wise and grit wise that I think they make a lot of sense. Ideally, if a guy like Fano would fall, like I think that'd be even more fun because like I like Miller, but I think Fano's maybe a better player, and he's gonna do well on grid NX too. I think as well. He's got some screws loose up there, which is in a good way, right? Like he's got some like I want to like bury people underneath the football field type of thing. He's kind of a kook, and so yeah, if he slid, I think that would be a lot of fun. If a guy like TJ Parker from Clemson, the edge rusher from Clemson, if he slid to fifth, like that would be a lot of fun. In the mock draft, the fan mock draft that we
Mhm.
do at Pride of Detroit, that's what happened. Fano fell to me at 17. And well, spoiler, TJ Parker's going to fall to me at 50. But like those guys like those would be more kind of dream scenario type guys where the talent should go earlier than what the Lions pick, but it's kind of a unique draft in a way that the playing field's going to be level and teams are going to pick things that fit them, and so you might see guys slide.
All right. Well, a couple quick more questions before we get you out of here. Let's talk top 30 visits. Do you put much stock in those? How impactful are they? The Lions have brought in a number of different players, many
Mhm.
different schools and positions.
Yeah, I've tracked those for years. Like, and I have data going back like years. I've got every draft pick that Brad Holmes has made. I know when they visited, when the contact was, where it was, and I used to um, like even track and look for patterns in those. But what I've noticed over the last couple of years is that some of the reporting sources have not been clear with their designations. We've had a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, they met with him at the combine." Okay, well, did they have a meeting like behind closed doors, or did they just run into a guy in the hallway and be like, "Hey, we talked at the Senior Bowl. Let's hey, you're looking good out there." But what do you like? Is it formal? Is it informal? And it's hard to tell the difference between them. The top 30 visits have been kind of lighter this year. And so it's been a little bit harder this year to kind of pinpoint exactly why the Lions might be bringing a guy in. A guy like Caleb Banks from Florida he's from Detroit, and he has an injury history. And so it's possible he slides to 50 because of an injury history. And we talked about defensive tackle at 50 being a possibility, maybe if they don't go edge, right?
Yeah.
So if a guy like Caleb Banks slides, they brought him in to do a medical check on him. And so if his medical checks out with them and he slides, he could be the pick, right? Like they're doing their homework. And that's kind of what it feels like this year. Tyree West from Tennessee didn't get an invite to the combine, so there's no medicals on him. So they brought him in, then they're doing medical. Like, and that's kind of what it feels like this year is a lot of like double checks and due diligence. And, we also, I think, are maybe have 20% of what they of the guys they've brought in. That's what we know about, maybe 20%. So
Oh yeah.
it's really hard to, you know, it's a hard year to see how much stock I put into it because I feel like I don't have a complete picture this year. So it's harder to figure out what's important and what's not when it comes to that right now. But like I said, I've always valued it pretty highly in the past. It's just this year's it's tougher.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, with that uncertainty, it's hard to kind of put too much concrete information in with that.
Yeah, I wish we had more. Wish we had more information, but the Lions, they're closed-lipped. So
Well, Brad Holmes did speak today, so
yes.
he did do that this morning. What is there one or two big takeaways you had from him speaking? Anything that jumped out to you?
This one is this presser that he does this year, this time of year, is always he always plays coy, right? He always,
Understandably.
yeah, he's doesn't want to give away too much. Um, I don't want to say go as far as to say he's putting out misinformation to like mislead the public because I don't think he necessarily does that. But I do think he skillfully avoided answering the questions that would have tipped his hand on anything he would have done. Um, I did like the fact that, he continued to push the narrative of we're just going to take the best guy. I think that's something that I think fans, and just everyone in general, we get locked in on it's going to be a tackle, it's going to be an edge. It makes the most sense, right?
Right.
So to hear him continue to remind us that it could be tackle, D tackle, right? It could be, or it could be tackle linebacker, or it could be edge tackle. And maybe they have a guy they like at 50 better than I do. And so I do like that he reiterates that and reminds everybody. I also like the fact that he said, he's not afraid to go all in. That's another thing that he's done in the past. Like, I'm not afraid to go all in to get a guy that I think could be a game changer. That's something that I admire about him. And an argument that I've been having with Jeremy Reisman over at Pride of Detroit for about 10 years now. Like we have a complete opposite view on how to operate. Like Jeremy understandably thinks you try and get as many dart throws as possible. And I
Yeah.
totally get that. That's a great narrative. And there is a history showing that works. Look at the Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta branch draft. Like that was more traded back, got more darts. 100% that strategy worked. I like my coach and I like my GM to have conviction and to not be scared of being aggressive. That's why I love when Dan goes for it on fourth down. That's
Yeah.
why I like when Brad goes and gets his guy. And yeah, it's going to cost more than you want sometimes, and but if he has that conviction, I want to see that. So I like that he, you know, reiterated that that's not going to change, right? Like he's still going to be the guy that says, if I need to go get it, I'm going to go get it.
Well, even though you reference them trading back,
Hmm.
they had David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift on the roster when they drafted
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs. And I mean,
Yeah.
that was a very capable backfield at that point.
Yeah.
And yet they went and did that and they went and got the guy they wanted. So you're
Yeah.
exactly right on that.
And Campbell was the same thing, right? They
Yeah.
had their starters and they went and drafted Campbell. Like both their first round picks didn't have clear paths to snaps at the time they were picked. Both their second rounders did, but like
Yeah.
and like it was funny, like we joked about it after that, if they would have drafted them in reverse order, people wouldn't have gotten as like freaked out as they did after day one in that draft. um but it's he's a very Brad is very good at reading what a player's value is and what he thinks other teams are going to do and where a player could be available or maybe not available. There's history there. He's done it over and over and over. And so, you know, you have to, you have to look at the fact that he's put in more work than any of us. And I mean, and I feel like I'm up till 2 in the morning, and I wake up at 5:30 with my kids, right? And I do that's one of my schedule right now. I'm getting like 3 hours of sleep every night, and I still know he's working harder than I am, and I know he's got more information than I do, and so um, I like when he has conviction. I enjoy that aspect of the people in charge of the organization that I like to root for.
Well, and that's the other thing you said. That's something coming from you when you're saying he's putting in more time than you because of the amount of time you have been and are putting into all
Yeah.
this. So, all right. Well, I have a final question before I
Okay.
ask you if I haven't asked you anything, and that is this. I'm going to preface it by saying this. Out of training camp last year, the Lions did not keep 53 players on their roster. They left a couple spots open because they said there were not 53 roster caliber players. So
Yeah.
let's apply that to the draft. How
Okay.
many first round grades do you think Brad and the Lions are going to have? Now, I know he was asked about it today and he said they don't have that number yet. On
Hmm.
my show yesterday, I put the over under at 17 because that's what the Lions are drafting. And I also thought that was right around where they had it last year. I think last year he said they had 15 to 18 players with a first round grade. And so, do you think it's over or under 17 and or how close?
I think it's under. Um, I'm trying to like look through my board real fast to see where I'm at. Um, like I mean, look, I don't think like he may grade Mendoza as a first round grade, but he's not going to take him, right? So he's like
Right,
that's not in the conversation. Um, and the same thing with Jeremiah Love, right? Like
right.
he's a first round talent, but it's not going to be on Brad's board. You could same thing with receiver. There's a couple of first round guys that aren't going to matter. So I think Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon, I think he'll be a first rounder for Brad. I think there's probably five, at least four offensive tackles, maybe five that I think will have first round grades. So now we're at what are you up to like 5 or 6 guys?
Yeah.
We one interior guy, Vegaoni, the Penn State guard. So that'll be what 6'7", no defensive tackles, 2 to 3 edges. So now we're up close to 10. I think maybe two linebackers because both the Ohio State linebackers. So now you're maybe up to 12 and maybe a safety. No, probably one safety, maybe two, maybe. I mean, so you're talking like 14 ish, like 14. And so
Yeah.
maybe it's closer to 17 than what I'm, what my initial gut was. But
Yeah.
um, I think it will be under. Because while I see a bunch of these tackles, like I don't know if he's going to. Like he may just say, no, we just like these three, and that was it, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But whereas I like 4 or 5. So my guess is it's going to be somewhere between like 12 and 16. That's kind of my guess, which means, I think they're going to end up getting a guy that is going to be a first round talent because you're going to see
Correct.
receivers go, you're going to see running back go, you're going to see quarterback go. So when they're sitting at 17, I am expecting them to have more than one guy that they have a first round grade on. Let me put it that way because of the other positions that are going to be drafted. So which one? That's the fun of it, right? It
Yes, it
really
is.
is, right? So, but you got a couple of safeties, a couple of corners, a couple of linebackers. It just seems like two guys, two, three guys at kind of, almost every position this year that could make sense. But like I said, there's going to be some like defensive tackle that I don't like anybody. I don't like anybody in the first round at all. Like if they trade back to 30, still wouldn't want a defensive tackle. Um, so yeah, I think it'll be under 17, but they're still going to be in a good spot.
All right. I said over, but by like one. I was like, man, that 17 is like that tough spot. It's like, with the
Sure,
odds of how many
for
wins do the
sure.
Lions have? Oh, 10 and a half. Oh, that's a real tough number because
Mhm.
it's like so close. But all the information you poured out here today, I could see it being just under as well, knowing also how skeptical they are on players and knowing
Sure.
there are that many few blue chips in there. Because I'm hesitant for the Lions to even trade up in this draft because of the lack of that blue chip caliber player to go get and the lack of
Yeah.
ammunition they have.
Yeah. Look, I think like the true blue players are all Ohio State defenders that the Lions would consider. Um, Sony Styles, Arvell Reese, the two linebackers, and then Caleb Downs. Those are the three guys where the Lions would aggressively move if they fall into like, a range for them. But beyond those three, I don't know if they would trade up.
Yeah. All right. Well, Eric, is there anything else that I haven't asked you about the NFL draft, the Detroit Lions that you'd like to share?
Um, I mean, I don't know off the top of
You've
my
shared a
head.
lot.
Yeah, like look, it's always a constant flow, right? Um, I'm sure we'll stop talking and then I'll think, oh, I probably should have said that or something like that. But this is a draft class where I really think they have a chance to get four impactful players. And that will be key for what they want to accomplish for the long term, right? The strategic moves that they made this offseason almost have set them up where they have to hit on these draft picks to become core players for them to build around. Because if you're going to give the contract extensions out to the players that you want, and you're going to play this, mercenary 1 year veteran, guys to fill holes, you're going to have to hit on a lot of your draft picks. And I think four of them, you can get four with the picks they have right now without trading. They can get like four guys. And who knows with Brad, he always seems to pull some guy out of the blue on day three anyways. And so, um, but if they can do that, they'll set themselves up for next year where that's four less guys that you got to target in free agency. And then if you can hit again in the draft again, like you could be setting yourself up for the next 5 years. Everyone wants to talk about windows. If you hit in this draft, it'll set you up to where you might have 3 or 4, 5 years of a situation where you can manage your cap the way you want to, develop the guys the way you want to, but you've got to hit. He's got to get at least four. If more is better, but you got to get at least four. And so that's really what this draft is going to come down to in the future of this Lions organization is can you get the right guys to fill those key roles for the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, that's exactly it, right? Those first three drafts were so crucial in setting the foundation, but
Yep.
the job doesn't get easier. This is just as important as the last two drafts, if not more important, arguably, because of the
Hmm.
players that have matured out of the system, and they need
Yep.
to replenish that.
Yeah, it's almost like 21 all over again. It's
Yeah,
it's it's almost like you've got to hit on all those guys. Like all the guys that they took in 21, they're here, right? For a reason.
yeah.
And you you need that type of draft to set you up for, and if he does it, he's going to look great. And the window is going to stay open and they're going to stay competitive and they're going to be able, like I said, the world opens to them if they hit. But Brad's got to pull he's got to pull it out of his hat this year in order to set them up for the future.
All right, that's what's going to make it that made for TV event that everyone's going to be
Yeah.
tuning into here before we know it. So, well, Erik, in case people don't already know about
Hmm.
prideofdetroit.com or your Patreon, or they're not that good at using Google to find you, where's the best way to find all your elements of all your work?
Yeah, like my name is unique. It has a unique spelling, right?
Yep.
Erik is unique. Schlit is its own uniqueness. I'm actually the only person in the U.S. that spells their name in that with those letters, in that
Oh,
way.
wow.
It's yes, it makes things very easy for me when it comes to getting emails and social media handles. So that's it, honestly everything that I have. It's all just my name. So if you like using Twitter, it's just at Erik Schlitt. If you like using Blue Sky, it's at Erik Schlitt. Um, Again, Pride of Detroit is the easiest. The easiest way to find me because that's where the majority of my stuff is. The easiest way to interact with me on social is social media. If you want to email me, I have Erik Schlitt at Gmail and I have Erik Schlitt at Yahoo. Like it's very easy stuff to remember. Um, the Patreon gets a little tricky because you just have to type in, but as long as you know the podcast name, it's Detroit Lions Breakdown, the Detroit Lions Breakdown podcast. So if you just type in to Google Detroit Lions Breakdown and Patreon, it'll come up. And when I get, like I said, when I get my board finalized and I get the grid index kind of finalized, which again I'm hoping to do the week like that Monday of the draft. Um, I'm going to put a newest edition of all those things out there, and it'll be a new board. There's a board on there already, actually two boards on there already that people can access to see what I've done leading up to this. But yeah, those are the easiest ways. Like if you go to Pride of Detroit, there's a message board, but I'm not hard to find. I guess it's just if you can spell my name right, you can probably find me in most spots.
Well, awesome. I'm glad, and I hope people will take you up on that and go look for his work. It's very detailed. I mean, if someone's spending 6 to 8 months building this grid index, folks, the final product is going to be worth checking out. So, Erik, thank you for taking the time to talk with me
Of
during this
course.
very busy time leading up to the draft. It's been a lot of fun. It's been educational, and just appreciate it, and can't wait to see your work coming out here in the next week.
Thanks. Yeah, it's look, it's a fun time of the year, and we've got what 10 days, and it's good to go.
That we do, and then you can rest again, maybe.
Yeah, about a week after the draft, that's when I start getting sleep again.
Uh, all right. Well, I wish you courage. Until then, thanks again, Erik. It's been a lot of fun. Again, a big thank you to Erik for taking time to talk Detroit Lions NFL draft with me, especially this close to the draft itself. Remember, you can catch all of his work at prideofdetroit.com. Thank you for tuning in, folks. Please tell your friends and family about this show. You can find us on social media like Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok these days. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.